It was an incredible scene. It was 4th of July. And of course, that's not a holiday there. So we were working and we were shooting an opera scene. The camera was behind the stage, over the singers and dancers, seeing the whole theater full of audience. So we had like 500 extras there. And so I said, roll it, playback. And suddenly, instead of Mozart's music, American national anthem starts to play.
And out of the flies came this huge American flag and unrolled, unfurled on the stage. And 600 Czechs stood up and sang the national anthem of the United States and knew the words.
I get goose pimples when I think about it. All the extras stood up and either sang or hummed the Star-Spangled Banner with us.
All stood up except 30 men and women standing, panic on their face, looking at each other what they should do. That were the secret police, dispersed among the extras,
And I was sitting there thinking, good God, the Army's going to come and we're all going to go to jail. Because this is an act of rebellion.
It started when we crossed the border. We just were in customs and they said, okay, you can go on. Milo said to me, you're now in Czechoslovakia, forget logic.
Only in a taxi I learned that we are going to see a play about a composer. And I thought I'm going to faint,
Milos made a great fuss and said, oh no, I hate biographies of musicians and that kind of thing. I loathe it. No, I'm not coming.
I saw so many, in communist countries, they love to make movies about composers because composers don't talk. They make music, they don't say anything subversive. And they were the most boring films I ever saw. So I was prepared for a painful evening. The curtain went up and there is this wonderful drama. I couldn't believe my eyes.
I was introduced to Milos in the interval.
Peter was very nervous. I met him for the first time that night.
And he said to me, with the marvelous directness that characterizes him, if the second act is as good as the first, I will make a movie of it.
I called Mr. Zanz, only to find out that he already had the name of the play on his list what to see. And that's how it all started.
I thought it was a great play. The play really worked for me. He said, well, what about a picture? I said, it's not a picture. I don't think it's a picture. I said, there's not enough about Mozart for me. And then Milos hit me on the arm. I still have the bruises, even though that was 20 years ago. He said, that's right. It needs music, Mozart, and music.
And he was just as forthright then. We spent an extraordinary weekend in which he said to me, you realize that everything will be different.
In a theater, everything is stylized. Nobody pretends that the tree is a real tree or the sunset is a real sunset, So in the language, when it's stylized, it's proper. Acting is a little exaggerated and stylized, and it's proper. Film is a photography. In photography, everything is real. Anything stylized would feel, fake.
What we ended up doing was spending 4 months together in his house in Connecticut, Monday to Friday. We were locked into what we came finally to regard as our prison. And then we would go back to New York on the Friday and instantly separate, not exchange a word for a blissful Saturday and blissful Sunday till the evening when he would come here to my flat to collect me and drive me back to prison for the next almost unendurable 5 days when we slowly hammered out the whole script moment by moment.
They had some bumps in the road along the way. I spoke to both of them at different times, and both used terms that you don't use in mixed company about each other.
Well, no, we had a big conflicts, because I hated his cooking and he hated my cooking.
I regarded ourselves, both of us, as the odd couple.
On the other hand, we had an enormous advantage to have the music before. So that we, for example, every day we spent like a couple of hours, just listening to the music, to Mozart's music, and then picking up pieces which would fit here or would fit there. And that humbled Peter Shaffer. The music humbled Peter Shaffer. Suddenly, you start to play music and you start to say the lines, and Peter himself was saying, no, stop talking, stop talking.
I said to Milos that I did not want repetitions. I did not want the Mozart theme. I did not want one piece of music. That it was not in the background, cueing the emotion we should feel, but it was in fact the foreground.
Peter Shaffer one day said, listen, the music is becoming the third. He must have been very nondescript face, that you wouldn't notice him in the crowd at all. So he couldn't be a leading man type, leading hero type. On the other hand, he has to be a wonderful actor and he has to master the music.
He was very hard on me, and he was quite gentle with the others. And then in the process, I learned. On one day, I spent maybe 6 to 8 hours in a screen test. Every 20 minutes, other actors came in, and I just played opposite them all day long. And so I got to watch Milos working.
Okay?
Every 20 minutes with a different actor or different set of actors.
Very good. No, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Fine. You still will probably...
Oh, I walked out.
That's all right.
And then I began to understand that the people who I was assuming he was most interested in, because it was clear from their work, he was also treating the same way as he treated me. And the people who you felt that wasn't going to be the right combination.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Those are the people that there was a much more gentler relationship with.
I think we auditioned over 1,000 people for all the parts.
I think the number we had at one time was 1263, and we weren't finished. I know someone ran a tally about we were not finished. I'm sure we passed close to 1,400.
It seemed like I was auditioning for a year. In retrospect, what we were really doing was rehearsing. I wasn't actually auditioning anymore. I guess I was rehearsing. I thought I was still working to get the part. But, in that time, I thought, this is a wonderful project, and he's a great director, and I'm really, really lucky to be still here.
Of course, you start with the main characters, and then you go down, but down doesn't mean less important. I think that the small, parts, bit parts are as important as the main characters. In certain way, I am paying even more attention to casting the small bit parts, because they have to be, once you see them, you will never forget them. Because nothing drives me more crazy when I'm watching a film and somebody appears, and then disappears for 20 minutes and then reappears, and he looks like the guy who was just there, and I'm, who is he? Who is she?
Milos called me and said, Winnie, I would like very much for you to be in my movie Amadeus. It is not a very big part, but I would love you very much to be in it.
One day, I was reading F. Mary Abraham for a small part in the movie. And he was all right. And then I had a young actor coming for a reading for Mozart. And I asked F. Murray, listen, would you just help me here? You know, this is just, to help and read Salieri to this young man. And F. Murray, probably because, that's now, it doesn't matter, gave a wonderful performance.
I did one of the things from Salieri, and then I stopped and said to him, "Oh, Milos, this is where he becomes the old man in the script, which I hadn't really worked on." And he said, "Well, do the old man." And I just did the old man. I didn't think for sure I wasn't going to get this thing, but I still acted my heart out,
He read so beautifully that it started to bug me,
A couple of days later, he called and he said, "I want you to know that you're my first choice." And I've been around for a while, and I said, "Well, that's nice. I'm very happy about it. But what does that mean?" You see, he wasn't saying, "You've got the part," or "I really want you to do it, and there's no question about it." And he said, "You're my first choice." Now, from my point of view, that doesn't pay the rent. I mean, I'm very flattered. And I said, "Thank you, Milos. Just tell me what I have to do next, because I'm busy right now painting my kitchen." Some time went by, and then he said, "He wants to see you for this improv group again. It's different people." I said, "No, I'm telling you, I'm not going to do it."
Milos said, that's the kind of guy who would be Salieri. And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, he thinks he's not going to be happy about what I say now, Milos or Murray. He says, this kind of guy thinks he would be a great actor if he didn't have breaks against him. Also, I think he's Salieri off stage as well as on stage, And he was right.
So after several weeks, I told F. Murray Abraham, okay, you'll get the part. He obviously didn't believe me because he immediately accepted a role in another film.
While I was on the set of Scarface, I got the word that I was going to do Amadeus. And everyone's attitude, the stars on the show, changed toward me immediately. I was no longer just this hardworking good actor named F. Murray Abraham like so many other hardworking good actors. I was the man who got the part that every actor in the English language was trying to get. And I was really scared, just scared, because I had talked the talk, and now I had to walk the walk. And for 3 days I couldn't answer the phone. I was just sucking it up, getting ready for the mountain.
This film could have been shot only in three cities, Vienna, Budapest, or Prague, because only these three cities have the same style of 18th century architecture. Prague was ideal. Prague was absolutely ideal because thanks to communist inefficiency, the 18th century was untouched.
Prague was an amazing time capsule. You could set up a camera just about everywhere without having to undo a lot of signs of the 20th century. They just weren't there.
There was no advertising. There was no... I mean, basically, you removed the electric streetlights. You were in the 18th century.
A lot of the locations, all you had to do was throw some dirt down, put a couple lanterns with some oil in it, and you were ready to go.
You have squares and streets. You can turn the camera 360 degrees around, and you don't have to change anything.
It's an exquisitely beautiful city. I don't think there is any other city in Europe that has such an extensive, uninterrupted core of 18th century structures.
For me, it was a very mixed, emotional experience because I was not allowed to go back. I was a traitor, an immigrant. So when I went there for the first time, which was more or less to, negotiate the making of the movie, that was very emotional for me because, before I didn't hope that I will ever see, my native country and places where I kissed my first girlfriend, ever again in my life. And then I was coming back to Prague for the shooting. I remember I was arriving January 2nd. It was very cold, snow everywhere. And I realized that, from now on, I have to cut myself emotionally from my past entirely because otherwise, the work would suffer.
When I got to Prague, in the beginning, as you remember, of Amadeus, there's the scene where his assistant coming with the muffins and Vincent Schiavelli in snow. And so I had written like a 13-page snow alert in English and on the back in Czech. I wanted trucks rigged, I wanted lighting packages, I wanted duplicate equipment, I wanted road maps. They got this thing and they said, what are you talking about? Half the people don't have phones. We don't have trucks that we can let sit in the sidelines. So I said, very simple, just tell me when it's going to snow.
We didn't have still the weather reports as perfect as we have today. So, well, there might be snow, so there was always a snow alert.
They phoned at one point and said, there's no snow. It's not going to snow this year. The long-term weather report says we're not going to have any snow. We're not going to shoot you until the end of March. We're going to shoot with fake snow. I said, okay. So you're free. You can take other work.
Every day we had to prepare 2 sets. One for in case there is overnight snowfall, and one in case there is not, you know. And so, but that was not my problem. That was not my problem. I didn't want him to know about it.
I was engaged to do an episode of Taxi on Monday, and Saul called on Thursday, the Thursday before, and said, it's snowing. Can you come now? I said, yeah. He said, I know, you got to be back in LA. We'll get you back on Monday. So I said, sure. He said, we'll just do the one exterior shot in the snow, and then you'll come back in a couple of weeks and we'll do the interiors. I said, okay. So I got on a plane Thursday night, and I got to Prague Friday night, and we shot Saturday night, and I was back for Monday. I had never been to a Soviet bloc country before, and going to one at such a fantastically accelerated rate of speed, my first impressions were enormous and huge. I felt like I was in a B-rate, a grade B spy movie. Followed everywhere. Hotel rooms bugged.
There were sizable rooms in this one hotel, and they all were very ornate, with a chandelier and these sconces and rugs, kind of worn, chipped, and tacky, but the fact is that they were there, And this one guy, Frank, he said, these guys have got this room bugged. I said, who cares? Let them listen. He said, no, man, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to let them listen to me. I'm going to knock that. I think, oh, what are you going to make a problem? No, listen, I want to show you. So he starts climbing around. The sconces, no. Looks like it's the chandelier. He looks at he gets up on a chair. He's climbing around. No, it's not here. And I said, let it go. Let's go to dinner. No, I want to find it. He said, he rolls the rug back, and he finds a plate about this big with 2 screws in it. He said, I told you, man. It's right here. He gets a butter knife. We had little kitchenettes, right? He gets a butter knife. He takes it out, takes the final screw out, and as he takes the last screw out, there's this tremendous crash, and the chandelier beneath us crashes down in the apartment below us. We went to dinner in it like a shot.
A friend of mine, an older Czech director named Jiří Weiss, gave me some pineapples and lemons for his daughter. And we met. She came to the set that Saturday night, and I had the lemons and the oranges, or the oranges and the pineapples and the lemons. And I gave her this stuff. And half the crew was secret police, and everybody knew it. And afterwards, I don't remember his name, but he was sort of smarmy cop, obviously cop. He said, so tell me, so what is this woman you meet, this intrigue in Prague? What is this? And I played like idiot. I said, oh, she's the daughter of a roommate of a friend of mine who's from here, used to make movies here. Anyway, he asked me if I would bring his daughter some pineapples and some lemons. And he said, pineapple? And I had learned the Czech word for pineapple. It's ananas. It's the same word as in French. I said, yes, ananas. And he said, yes, in the can. I said, no, real, fresh ananas. He said, fresh pineapple? Fresh ananas?
And then for the next 20 minutes, I watch it go around the set. And they're all doing the same gesture at the end of the exchange. They're going, in the can. And the teller of the story says, no, fresh ananas. And they all kind of, and looked at me and kind of, I think they were the only 2 pineapples in Prague that January.
When they go down the corridor of the insane asylum, that was a war museum.
The central hall where all the mad people were kept was part of a military hospital for the wounded from the 30 Years' War.
It was a funny situation because when communists took it over, they left only the ground floor as a kind of a museum, but was closed for the public. And up in the 2nd and 3rd floor were a secret archive of the secret police. Well, that was a panic when, they learned that they showed us the ground floor corridors.
We were questioned very closely as to what our connections were. We could be, after all, we could be CIA members or we could be whatever. And they didn't much like the idea of us, a film company, invading the military archive. But we managed to persuade them.
When we went there for the first time, that corridor had 75 2-ton cannons all looking at each other. And Milo says, I love it. I said, yeah, I love it too. What are we going to do with these 2,000-pound cannons? Oh, he says, the cannons can't be there. Oh, I said, well, I figured that out already, that the cannons can't be there. But, you know what? We're going to have to get all of these cannons out, and you want the pristine snow. No snow can have anybody's footprints on it, and then we got to get these cannons out.
Well, I didn't know it's a problem, so there are some cannons there, take them away. I didn't know that every cannon weighs several tons, They have to hire the whole army to take it out.
The first 3 weeks of shooting was Salieri in the hospital room. I was the guy that went out with him in the morning, and Dick Smith, who was our makeup artist, at 4 o'clock in the morning, every morning, for 4 hours of makeup before the crew came. And you go out to Barrendorf, no one is there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the minute you get there, where's my tea, Well, I just got out of the car, Murray. I'm going to go get your tea.
Dick Smith is the best makeup man in the world. And when we would start working in the morning, it was 4 o'clock. I would get up. I'd get to the studio by 4:30. We'd work on the makeup for 4.5 hours. As much preparation as I had made for the old man, the voice, the gestures, and so on, the fact is that after sitting for 4.5 hours, at that hour in the morning, you are kind of tired and slow, and your movements are kind of like this. This kind of thing starts to happen. And I also had lenses in my eyes, which every once in a while had to be removed, and my eyes had to be sprayed with stuff so that the pain, which was always there when I was working, would not be too much. Once I looked into a mirror at my face, I felt like it was completely convincing. All I had to do was believe this guy, and it was not hard. I'm not denigrating my work. I'm a very proud actor. But with a man like Dick Smith there, and with the words of Peter Schaffer, they've got to be the most beautiful descriptions of music ever written, whether on film or in...
When the first thing that was filmed in the shooting schedule was all of Salieri Old. That sort of breathtaking section of Murray's performance, most breathtaking, was all done in the first couple of weeks. But it gave us the time to work on our own. We rehearsed a lot on our own. We rehearsed all of the scenes before the filming began. Initially, Meg Tilly was playing Constanza in the film, and she was amazing. Basically, at one point, Milos had said he felt like we had done it, do you know, because the work was going so well up to that point. And the day before Meg was to appear on camera for the first time, she got hurt in a soccer game.
She's playing soccer with some kids in the street, and she torn the ligament in her leg so badly that the doctors told us that we would have to wait like 5 weeks before she could start, and that we couldn't because it was all independent money which Sol put together, and we just couldn't afford it.
It was shocking, I think partially because we were where we were, behind the Iron Curtain in its way, cut off in a way from our lives to a significant degree, more than if we had been shooting in Western Europe or someplace closer to home. Suddenly she was just gone and in a hospital. So in a very short amount of time, they had to find the actress who would take over the part.
The casting director who was brought on to hire the new Constanza, this woman called an acting teacher of mine and said, do you have anybody you can recommend for the part? And he said, Elizabeth Berridge. And she said, oh no, she's too weird and introverted and she's too quirky for this outgoing, bubbly girl, which I was.
We flew to New York for a weekend, and it was extraordinary.
Friday night, we went Prague, Paris, and Saturday morning, we took the Concorde to New York. So we got there, went to Miloš's apartment, and they had 60-some-odd girls lined up for us to see.
I saw like 60 girls. Sunday, I read like 12 of them. Out of these 12, 2 where I couldn't decide in between them, so Sol decided, let's bring them to Prague and let's do a screen test with them in Prague.
It felt like calamitous to me. It felt like it had gone so badly, and I remember saying to my father, if I can't even speak, how am I going to get a part acting ever? Because speaking is required in that line of work. And then I got a call saying, you're flying to Czechoslovakia for a screen test, and there's you and another contender. And so I had no passport, and this was, I think, the next day.
Miloš went back to Prague Sunday so he could shoot on Monday. And I went over there on Monday, went back with the 2 girls on Monday. And that was some ushering job with 2 girls who were up for the same part, being with him. I kept saying, I love you both, I love you both.
We were flown over and we tested, and they had us all, they did the hair and the makeup, and meanwhile they're filming the movie, and it's all like you really want to not feel, start to feel like you're part of the thing, and because in my case, I knew I was getting back on a plane the next day, and apparently they couldn't decide that first day, so they said, well, there's going to be another test tomorrow. So we came back and went through all the do's and the gowns, and this went on for a week. And the other woman and I hung out every night and would have dinner, and I was always a nervous wreck, and she would say, no, I'm sure you look lovely, and that wig they had you in was a girl, I'm sure you did great. And I was preparing to okay, how do I say thank you for having me and for considering me and for this nice trip, first class ticket to Prague. Thank you so much, and bye. And good luck with your movie. And and Miloš said, essentially, you both have the part. It's impossible to decide between you. So I had to go with the fact that one of you is simply too pretty to play Constanza. So Elizabeth, you have the part. And and I was like, thanks. Well, I have the part. That's good.
As much as I love McTilly, I think as a personality, Elizabeth Berridge was more right, because Constanza was a landlady's daughter. She was a street kid,
So I got the booby prize and had to stay and had packed clothes probably for 3 days, and There I was for 6 months in Prague and started work the next day. And that was it. I was Constanza.
Frau Mozart?
I remember the first day, the first scene that I shot was the Nipples of Venus scene where I come to see Salieri, and I had to eat like about 1.5 million. And I remember getting ill, and Milos was like, it's her job. But wasn't exactly having to work in a coal mine, but eating 1 million marzipan balls can... Maybe I didn't know I didn't have to eat the whole thing. No, you know, that was another thing that 20 years old, I didn't know, oh, you can spit it out at the end of, I don't know. Oh, we're going again, okay. And it's funny how that can be the only thing that's on your mind, and I couldn't. I had to, it's like, oh.
They're wonderful. It was a big thrill for everybody to realize that we were going to film in practically the only wooden opera house left in Central Europe, and also most perfectly preserved. It had undergone many alterations, but they were of a minor nature, and architecturally the place was intact.
When we first time arrived to Prague for location, and they showed us the theater, we were there, you know, with Peter Sheffer and Saul, when suddenly I realized, well, Peter Sheffer disappeared. Where is Peter Sheffer? We found him in the corridor, you know, hidden, crying. Because he learned that he is standing exactly at the place where Mozart himself in person conducted the world premiere of Don Giovanni.
I tell you, we felt awed the first time we stepped on that stage and realized that our hero had been in that very spot.
I think this fact, you know, gave a lot of humility and respect for that place to every actor and every dancer and everybody there.
There's something that happens when you do that, I promise you, when you do it in the place, in the atmosphere. I'm not crazy about, you know, spiritual, I don't know, ghosts and things. I'm not, but I don't deny them. And suddenly, the reality of the place and the thing and the moment really enters into you, which is why it was a great idea to do it there instead of trying to build the set. It was brilliant.
But, again, thanks to the neglect, you know, during the communist era, it was a powder keg.
It was in danger of burning down at any moment. And it still had gas lines in it. They lit it with gas. They had, you know, they used to have limelight in it. It really hadn't been modernized.
Now we are going there to light, you know, millions of candles.
All those candles in a wooden opera house in a wooden dome. When the chandeliers were lit, I remember holding my breath for what seemed like 4 days.
And there we were, all these extras, all these wigs and all this flammable stuff in this tinderbox dry theater where Don Giovanni had its premiere. That theater we were in. Amazing.
Imagine the trust of the opera house allowing us to be there.
We had every day like 30 or 40 firemen everywhere standing there. But they were I will never forget Don Giovanni. At certain moment, Don Giovanni moves to the table, does this, and he has a hat with huge plumage, you know, feather, you know, like a peacock feather, right? And leans like that and talks to the Commodore. We rehearsed. Everything was fine. Okay, let's shoot. So light the candles. We didn't realize that there on the table is a small candelabra, which now is lit. Okay, camera, roll it, playback, we are shooting.
Of something that was greater than we were.
I remember the stunned silence of those long, long main titles at the end of the film while the piano concerto is still playing. And the extraordinary thing, but people waited until the end of the main titles, and then the extraordinary applause at the end, just as if they'd been to a concert. And then you got the first sense that perhaps this was going to be an unusual movie, and that perhaps the music had won.
The thing that pleases me almost more than anything else about the whole enterprise is the number of people, young people, who discover the man I think is the greatest composer in the world.
So many people were introduced to Mozart as a composer compared with what would have happened if we'd just done it in concert halls. It would have taken us 100 years to reach as many people as the film reached.